What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, and I'm your favorite blind film critic. This is Under Paris. And I've tried to make this video multiple times because I cannot for the life of me remember these names, but the audio description is done by Diffuse. It's written by Bryn Poppy and it's narrated by Vito did something. And I don't know why I can't get that dude's name. But Vito is a voice that we've heard before. He's the guy that does the narration on The Good Doctor and Abbott Elementary this past season. The maligned fans were not happy when ABC made a switch and took the old narrators off and replaced it with this new company. And he was one of the narrators that swapped in for some shows. And got a lot of flack. So it was interesting to see him work with a different company on a feature-length project with something that didn't have sort of like a preconceived notion of what what came before it. This isn't a sequel to something, so it's not like he's following somebody who was great and then he replaced them, which is basically what happened on The Good Doctor. Like, Tristan Snyder was doing great work and then he came in and just, we're gonna talk about The Good Doctor now. He's a kind of like a drolling voice, and it's not that there's no spot for him in audio description. If anything, this film kind of proves that there are places for him. My problem is that Diffuse has never produced great audio description. I don't think they ever have. I think every time I've seen Diffuse, I'm always like, oh, well, whenever I hear a script that's problematic and it gets down to the end, Diffuse is one of the audio description houses where I'm like, well, that makes sense. Like, there's always a problem. And there were problems before I knew it was Diffuse. I was like, what is up with this audio description? It wasn't him, though. Like, Vito was not my number one problem, where I was like, this guy's voice. Hulk smash. But I want to talk about the film a little bit first, because then we'll come back to the audio description, because this film is batshit crazy. This is the film of the year, guys. Netflix is trying. What Netflix needs to do is just stop trying and let their like foreign departments make films and then just dub them. Because whatever Netflix France is doing, kudos. Kudos to you, sir. So this film stars Bernice Bejo. I've forgotten how to pronounce her name because I haven't seen her since The Artist. This film stars Academy Award nominee Bernice Bejo. Who was last seen in The Artist. And what's she doing here in Under Paris? She's a shark expert. So that should tell you all you need to know. Really, I'm done at this point. I just told you it's shark expert. She's a shark expert. Academy Award nominee Bernice Bejo is a shark expert. Done. Do you need more than that? Like, okay, so there are sharks in like the Rhine and the rivers, the freshwater rivers. Somehow, and they're trying to figure it out at the beginning of the film. We have like this crew that is in the water trying to help out, and they see this, this whale that's been attacked, and then they find out that there's like a shark. It's a large shark. It's never referred to as like a Meg, though. They don't go that route with it. This is not like a Meg ripoff. It's just a large mako, shark. And but then the film just goes kind of crazy with it. But what I like about it is that it goes crazy, but it tries to keep it as serious as possible. Like French filmmakers are really on top of their game when it comes to trying to make films that are artistic in nature. So this feels like the artistic version of the Meg. The artistic version of Sharknado. This feels like, from the producers of Anatomy of a Fall comes Under Paris. it has a different approach and a different style to it that is very interesting. This is oddly enough the second French film that I've seen this year after Wages of Fear that's been dubbed by Netflix. So I appreciate the fact, and I'm jumping in on them doing this because I want them to do more international content. I want them to see that there's an audience that's listening to these tracks. So I'm trying to be really supportive of this because, again, they never described Roma. Still, to this day, their Best Picture nominee, Roma, has never been audio described. It's driving me insane. But yeah, this shark movie has audio description. It's bloody. It's people get in the water and they get just eviscerated. So many people die in this film. Everybody just keeps getting in the water. That's one of those things about this type of movie is that everybody just keeps getting in the water and they just keep dying. And nobody ever listens to anybody. Like there's a scene where they go to the mayor and they try to explain things and the mayor's like, "No, we are gonna have our triathlon. Shut these people up. This can't get out the news." And you're like, "Oh, there's gonna be a triathlon." Okay. Well, that scene's gonna be brutal. It is. Um, so it's one of those things where they just keep feeding humans into the water. So yeah, obviously don't trust your government because there might be sharks in the water you're about to swim in. Especially when they go like over the top and they like swear that it's like super safe. And they're like, actually, we've created this system to really purify the water and to cleanse the water, and so the water has never been safer. Okay. um, and the film has such a bonkers ending that is so bleak that I'm honestly like, I was in a certain place where I was like, well, I feel like this is just like the Meg. And then I wanted to be like, wow, I gotta give it props for this ending. And sticking with it is going with it. And it just kind of ends. And it's very much like a scorched earth type of ending. It does leave room for a sequel. I have no idea what that sequel would look like, but I'm very intrigued. And I had no idea this was coming. But I enjoyed it. I had more fun with this than I have like most Netflix originals that pop up at the end. Like this is better than Atlas. Atlas had like $100 million budget. This is better than Atlas. I'm just gonna be honest. It's more fun. It knows exactly what it wants to be. You can see that it is influenced because it's really hard to make a shark film that's not influenced by another shark movie. But at the same time, it's got this vibe of Frenchness in it. Is that a word? Is Frenchness? It has this Frenchness about it where it feels like it's an elevated shark movie where we've made something that like just premiered at Cannes and then is now is now over here in Netflix. I could only have seen this at Cannes and people being like, "Oh yes, high art. This is high art." Very, very interesting film, and I love that this is what Bernice has been doing with her career since her Oscar nomination. It led her to this. To be fair, she is starring at least, so that's good. She is the lead actress in this film, so she plays the shark expert who has to kind of convince people, but God, everybody around her is an idiot. For the most part, almost everybody around her is like doing dumb shit and, get in the water when they're not supposed to get in the water. Just, not getting out of the water fast enough, predictably, and, a whole bunch of things. So, but here's a little hint for you. So everybody knows what happened over in France with World War II and how there were bombs and stuff, and there kind of still are, maybe down on like the ocean floor, and maybe they're undetonated. And that's one of those things that when you talk about like making a film under Paris, where it's like, oh yeah, that could be something that is like really specific to the region, is when something like that, or when you're able to, even if it's not true, if you're able to suggest it because it logically makes sense, that it makes for an interesting sort of like side thing. Oftentimes we choose films based on location for certain reasons because we want like a certain part. And it's interesting that is something that can come along with a film called Under Paris. is they're like, oh yeah, we have undetonated bombs at the bottom of the ocean. Let's see how that plays out. So, yeah, this is insane in a good way. I enjoyed this in a good way. I had fun with this. I have no idea what the special effects look like. If this looks like Sharknado, I'm sorry. If I'm recommending you a film as a sighted person that looks like Sharknado, I apologize. I have no idea. My gut instinct says though that this looks at least fairly competent and not quite Sharknado. It may look somewhere in between, where like it's obviously CG, but also not Sharknado. I don't, they didn't get the asylum to make this, so it's gonna look inherently better. Um, so the audio description on this, uh, now that I can go back and talk about it, one of the biggest problem that I had with it before I knew it was diffuse, is mixing. The sound mixing betrays itself. It betrays itself in a really odd way. Like I've talked about how some films, like you can't really hear the film track because the audio description track is louder. You can't really hear the audio description track because the film track is too loud. That kind of mixing happens all the time. This is oddly mixed, where there are times where it's balanced just fine, but when the action rises, which it does, and people start screaming, or the explosions are happening, or the music gets really loud, whatever, it all swells. What they end up doing is they end up ducking the audio, but at the same time, they don't really increase the audio description. If anything, it feels like it almost decreases, so nothing is really audible. Nothing is really perfectly audible. You get kind of like a muddled original audio track, but then also your audio description track is not loud enough to beat. It's not ducked enough, if that makes any sense. So they didn't actually complete anything. They just made sort of like weird action sequences that are not great because I can't really understand the description because we clearly brought down the level of the film, but we didn't bring it down enough. And the sound is not pronounced enough on the audio description track, so nothing really worked. The whole thing just kind of, those scenes just kind of you just kind of like strain. You're like, what the fuck is happening here? And it does that a couple times. There are a couple times where the action rises so much and it gets so loud. And neither the film nor the audio description track wins. They both lose, which is so weird because usually one of them wins. And I've never seen something done so incompetently to where I can say that I didn't fully hear the audio of the film like well enough to be able to be like, oh yeah. Although the audio of the film at that time is pretty much just screaming. So to be fair, I kind of did understand that well enough. Is not a whole lot. But I mean, there are occasionally like there's dialogue where somebody's like, give me your hand. Like that kind of stuff. But there's also the audio description. It wasn't loud enough. And this guy, because he doesn't have like a rise and fall in his voice, it's still just very flat. It's a very flat narration. So my advice to Vito would be find documentaries. I made a post so that people could actually know who did the audio description for Good Doctor and Abbott Elementary because nobody knew. And somebody mentioned something that sounded like a documentary series to me that they heard Vito on, and they're like, oh, I thought he was really good on that. I'm like, well, he probably would be really great on like docu-series and documentaries. It's a nice flat voice, and he speaks clearly and would be great at giving you information. So, yeah, I didn't mind him here, though. I didn't think he brought down this film. I think if he had a better mix, it would have been interesting, because there's a different way where this film has kind of a different vibe and a different approach. It's not cheesy. It's not inherently trying to be cheesy like The Meg. So it's not going for those kind of sequences. It has moments where it's trying to be very serious, you know, very like we're making a real movie. Like it doesn't understand what camp is. Like French directors don't know what that is, so they're not trying to do that. They're just trying to make something that is high art, but is also a shark movie. So there's no reason to have it feel like it has like campy qualities in the audio description by having somebody who's like incredibly reactionary to the action on screen, because the film feels like it's a serious drama sometimes. There are moments in this film where you could forget what the film is about because you could just be watching the actors doing their thing and forget that this is, you know, they hired like legitimate actors for this film. Like everybody in this film is fine. From what I could tell, it's dubbed, so I can't fully tell, but it's you can tell like with the way that the script is written, and nobody's going for some weird cliche words. The theme, the score, everything like that. Even the way that they've chosen to dub the film is with people who are taking this really seriously. Everybody took this really seriously, and it's just the film is batshit crazy and ends in the darkest timeline. The absolute darkest timeline that it could have possibly ended in. Um, so prepare yourself for one of the weirdest and darkest endings of the year. I enjoyed Under Paris. I did. Um, it's not a great movie. I know it wants to be. It wants to get like an Oscar nomination. It wants to be like the first shark movie from France to be nominated for an Oscar. That's what I feel like it's trying to do. It's not going to do that, but it's better than a lot of stuff Netflix makes. So Netflix France, you guys are doing it right. You guys are making some really big swings over there. Although Wages of Fear was terrible. I hated that movie. This is fine. I had fun. So I'm gonna give Under Paris. I'm gonna give it a B. Yeah, why not? I mean, like, it's around the same grade I gave like The Beekeeper and Roadhouse. Those were enjoyable. I thought this was enjoyable. Um, I had fun with it. So maybe you will too. I don't, it's not, it all depends on what your level of fun is and what you consider to be fun. But it absolutely, like those horror movies, it always has dumb characters where you're like, get out of the water. Why are they in the water? Get out of the water. Get out of the water, dumbass. What the fuck's your problem? Why are you going in the water? Like, you will do that. You will absolutely do that. It's impossible to not do that because as somebody who's sitting on the outside of a shark movie, you know it's in the water. You're like, this is a shark movie. Why are you in the water? Um, so anyway, it's got some weird twists and stuff to it too that I think people will appreciate. It's a weird movie. Check it out. I loved it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you guys on the other side.